So what happens here is that we have this bunch of values. So we're gonna try to use the rightmost value as choose it as a pivot. So what happens is that I'm gonna like conduct operation Z, where it's gonna like compare um, P versus like the new value that it is. So for this case, I'm gonna compare the first value, operation Z, 4 and 3. 3 is smaller, so I'm gonna insert it in. So right now my P is here. Now my P shifts. Ask the question, 4 and 2. This guy's smaller, I insert it in. And I'm gonna constantly shift it. 4 and the 1. 1 is smaller, so I move over here. I shift. This guy obviously bigger, so retains. This guy obviously bigger, so he retains. 4 stays here. And then I'm gonna push everything into its place from here then on. And for this case, it will be 5, the 6, and the 4. Notice the P is still over here. And what we actually want to do is that we want to bring our right guy. So operation Y is that we perform a swap. And swapping between with who? Swapping with like the P index with the rightmost guy. And notice this P guy is like the rightmost guy from the very start. What you're gonna get is we do a swap. So obviously the 4 will come here, and then the 5 will come here. So now that's all you get. And the rulebook is stating that the value is 2, and for this case is that we want the second largest value. And obviously over here, when we perform all the operations, like intuitively speaking, all the values under like this area within like the P zone, this is the P zone, here it's all like the lesser value, and whatever's over on the other side, the end of the spectrum, is like the positive value. And now that the rulebook is saying that I want the top 2 values. So where you're gonna get like your values, intuitively speaking, you're just gonna take from these guys over here. So now you are cut down with like these 2 options. It's either the 5 or the 6. So you're gonna like do a recursive based off like operation Z onto these guys. So you sort of like recursively do operations, perform a operation Z on this mini group. And so I mean like the P guy obviously will start off with here this time around. So I'm gonna ask the question, is this guy, compare this guy and this guy. So this guy is definitely bigger than me, so so like this guy is like, if I have the 6 and the 5, I'm gonna go recursive. This guy gonna retain. And then my 5 will come back to here. So now there's like no value over here. um, and I just gonna punch them back in, and it's gonna be like these boxes of like the 6 and the 5. And obviously this guy falls under the bracket of like more, and this guy, and the P is over here, and then I gonna definitely operation Y and do the swap. And once I do the swap with the P index, 5 will be here, 6 will be here, and this is the final result. And in terms of like what are we actually gonna send back to the system, is basically these guys over here, 5 and 6. I mean, like they want like the second largest value, so like in terms of like the rulebook is saying that they only interested in the 2 actually. So I'm only very much interested in whatever this guy is actually. So I'm gonna just return this guy into the system. So like when it comes down to actually casting these spells, I just honestly feel that these spells have very much little items to actually talk about under this topic, at least for this topic of like hippify, because whatever we are doing, we are just it everything, it just revolves around playing of like the character of like saying this sort of like partition. And obviously we were being introduced about like hippify during the past few episodes as well, and it's very much the same logic that whatever we do, it's there's not much of like a complicated like maneuvering using of the plus minus, no complicated thing. Like it's a very straightforward thing that like the whatever the rulebook is stating is that okay guys, I want the second largest value, and that's all I want. And that's all I want. I think that's why it makes things very simple. You want a second largest value, okay, I'm gonna throw in a partition in, I'm gonna do a hippify in, or I can even do like some form of like sorting to actually find out like which guy is like the biggest dude. It's that simple. And in terms of like complexity wise, I just feel that it is in terms of like the mana cost wise that that is like expensive. So in order to maybe say like to create like a max hit, right? Like the mana cost, it spends is like big O-N, and then when you actually need to actually pop the value, it's like K log N. Push value I'm not so sure, but like pop it requires this. And then for maybe say a normal array and you're doing some form of like sorting, um, the mana cost it takes, it's like n log n. They didn't actually talk much about like the popping from array, but I just believe it just uh, the mana cost is like big O of 1. So like overall, if you were to compare the operation, this operation J, this operation K. Operation J, the K is usually smaller than this n item based on how many items the rulebook is like asking for, and so this guy is smaller than this, so often not you perform operation J. And obviously we did introduce like a new operation which is the operation N. What operation N does is that you have this bunch of values and you're gonna like mimic that you get this centerpiece over here, and then what's gonna happen is that you are basically, there's a possibility of you dividing by 2, and then you're gonna like partition it again, and you possibly gonna like get an n quarter, and eventually what it leads up to is basically of a calculation which leads you to like the mana cost of like 2n. So if you were to compare n operation njk, n in terms of like mana cost wise, it's like the least, and that's why we actually use the n operation. And that's how I will be able to actually say that okay, I'm gonna use like this say how I'm gonna use brute force to actually fight against the main character. This is how I'm gonna actually argue it between maybe say n, j, k operations. I'm gonna use the operation n to actually fight against say the brute force operation. Yeah. Within these few chapters, I just really feel that there's not much to actually talk about with among the spells, because to me it's like this character that we're playing is like it has like full of these passive spells, right? So like the spells, there's not much to actually talk about. It's like a passive spell, there's usually not much to talk about. But if it has like a spell wise, then on like maybe say on the previous episodes, then we got quite a number of things to actually talk about. But for this wise, it's like very much about like comparing which character do we actually do use, and for I think that's the complicated part, and that's the focus. And so yep, with that everything comes to an end.